on rolls of honor, scripted bold in golden splendor. For principle we made a stand, courageous people, splendid land.
The RLI had won all their battles, but the war was lost. Kill rates don't win wars, but during its brief 19-year history, it is estimated that the Rhodesian Light Infantry accounted for between 12 and 15,000 enemy guerrillas, with the loss of 85 men killed in action and 49 men who died on operations. RLI soldiers were recipients of 4 Silver Crosses and 42 Bronze Crosses of Rhodesia. They had done their duty.
Well, it's my great pleasure to have Tony Kruger with us. Tony was a color sergeant in Support Commando, and it's really great to have a fellow RLI brother on our program today. Tony, why don't you start off by just telling us a little bit about your background, where you went to school, how you ended up in the army, that kind of thing?
Okay, well, I grew up in Bulawayo. My last school I went to was Gifford Technical High.
Okay.
And we sort of grew up outside of Bulawayo. My folks moved out onto a small holding in Rangemore. And, we all grew up hunting and fishing and catapults and catties. And then my mother got a job as the secretary at the Sarini Mission in Fig Tree. And they held a large portion of ground there, about 28,000 acres, I believe, half of which was rented out to a cattle farmer. And so we got into the hunting in a big way, a really big way, like trying to bunk school and all sorts of stuff, to get out there to go hunting. And there was a group of us. My dad worked on the railways, and there was this group of us that used to congregate at the Railton Club in Bulawayo. And it consisted of myself, my 2 brothers, Mark and Paul. We had like a foster brother, Billy Chalmers, and Nick Euster, Bruce Fraser, Mickey Masson. And the guys from the squadron will know those guys, because my elder brother, Mark, Nick Euster, Mickey Masson, and Bruce Fraser all went into the squadron.
I found this actually quite interesting, because I was actually with his elder brother, Mark Kruger, in training troop RLI. Mark was in the SAS, and he'd been sent there to look after those of us who'd signed on to join the SAS, myself, Graham Peake, and Matt Lamb. And there's Mark Kruger in the front row. Of course, we had to do a RLI recruit course before we were allowed to do SAS selection. There's me in the back row. So yeah, I knew his brother very well. Very nice guy. Unfortunately, I believe he died in an accident involving swimming in Kariba, where he had a carpenter business.
And my brother Paul, myself, and Billy Chalmers, we ended up in the battalion. And Billy and Paul were in 3 Commando. And when I passed out of training troop, I was posted to support group. And I was the only one out of my recruits course to go to support group. We were only 11 of us passed that recruits course. And I went to support, and the other 10 went to the other commandos.
What was your intake number? 137?
No, there was no intake number. I was course number 42.
Oh, you're part of the old school. So what year are we talking when you did?
We started in. It was a bit of a funny recruits course, because I joined in on the 30th of November 1971.
Okay.
That was the day. That's the day I ended up in training troop, and sort of within 2 weeks there was about 8 of us. Some of the guys I remember was John Schatz. I think you might know that name. He's on the contact book cover, the guy with the MAG. Bruce Owen, Mark van Rooyen, and myself, and there was a couple of others. I think we were about 8. And we started this recruit course with just the 8 of us. I think it was 6 or 8.
Sure.
And then somewhere along the line, somebody decided that this recruit course was too small to continue. And I mean, we were already like 2 weeks in. And they stopped it.
Huh.
While they looked to build up numbers, to make this thing viable to run. So we spent the next couple of weeks doing recruits course, but not officially. You know, we just sort of carried on, and then the barrack rooms started to fill up, and then they brought in guys from that had joined other services that needed to do their basics. Now, and I believe that was unusual because they normally went to other places like Llewellyn to do their basics. You know.
Yes.
So we had these guys, and we ended up, there was a lot. We filled about 3 barrack rooms, I think. So we were close here around about 30 guys on that course.
You'd signed on as a regular already?
I was a regular already, yeah. I'd actually signed on while I was still writing my O-levels.
Can you remember your number?
Yes, it's 5592. So, and then the other guys came in. I mean, Mark van Rooyen was consecutive to me. He was 5593, you know. So that came in.
Sure.
And then we had all these hangers on, and then this recruit course only started after Christmas. And we were, I don't know if it's fortunate to say, we were part of one of the last proper Christmas dinners that the battalion had before the war got into full swing, you know, where you went into the, troopies went into the old graze hall there, and instead of eating off those stainless steel plates, you know, those things that you used to eat, those trays, yeah. It was a proper sit-down dinner with a menu and china plates and knives and forks. And then
did the officers serve you?
Yeah, the officers and the senior NCOs were the waiters. So that took lots of flack, you know. Whereas recruits, we just had to, we shut up because we knew if we chirped anything, we were going to get, when we got back to training troop, we were going to get nailed, you know. But the other troopies were tuning their like their OCs and their CSMs and their sergeants and stuff, and tuning, hey, waiter, bring me another beer, and you know. And then of course, Ian Douglas Smith arrived, you know, and gave us a spiel. Yeah, and then the O's made Ian Smith do a down, and he had to stand up on a table and do a down. And then when he finished the down, the O's started throwing mincemeat, those Christmas pies.
Mince pies.
Started loying old Ian. Yeah, they're throwing loying old Ian Smith with mince pies. So it was something to remember. I've still got the menu somewhere here, you know, from that dinner. And
is that so? You had like Christmas gunfire, eh? Whiskey with your
yes,
your tea or whatever.
Yes, but that was that was on Christmas morning. But the dinner was, the Christmas dinner was before Christmas, you know.
Okay.
But on Christmas Day, yes. On Christmas Day, yes, even as recruits, we got the gunfire. And then after Christmas, then the course started. And as you know, well, in those old, that was still basically like a peacetime army, and we'd grown up hard. I mean, we slept on the ground at Sarini Mission. We slept on the ground in the rain this winter, and we sort of thought we were quite hard. But even then, training troop was a shock to the system. You know what I mean? It was that old hardcore recruits course that we got dumped into, and the attrition rate in that first 2 to 3 weeks was unbelievable. And the end of the 6 weeks, then all those other guys, the other services guys that were in there, they only had to do that 6 weeks and they left, you know. And then it became even tougher after that. And recruits course in those days was like nearly 6 months long. And it just carried on and on and on because, you know, we did other stuff that later recruits courses didn't do. Like at the end of the course, after we'd done our 120 miler and all that sort of stuff, we did a basic demolitions course as well.
Okay, yeah.
And that was like 2 weeks extra added on, you know.
Yeah, our recruit course was only 18 weeks, 4.5 months.
Yeah, and we were being revved right up to the end. I remember the night before our passing out parade on the square, we were still doing change parades. So, you know, and we went on to the square and we did our drill thing, and then we passed out, and then we got marched up to the CQ stores to go and get our battalion cap badge and our stable belts, you know.
Yeah.
It was like the final thing.
Sorry for asking all these questions. Was Moose Erasmus your course sergeant major, or was that before his time? You said Robin Tar was there. Or?
Robin Tar was the boss man, eh? He was
of training troop.
Training troop. He was the boss man of training troop. Yeah, he was newly promoted. You know, him and he newly promoted into as OC of training troop. It was he was quite relaxed, really, for being an ex-RSM, you know, but he ran that place well, eh? And he was hard. I mean, he was, I had a problem for about the last 6 weeks of my recruits course. I actually had a growth on the bone underneath, on the leg underneath my right kneecap, you know. And I was like sort of hobbling. I sort of managed to hobble through my 120 miler and I hobbled through the coin phase. And we were on the drill square preparing for our passing out parade, you know. And I couldn't drive my right foot into the tarmac because of this growth, and the pain was just unbelievable. And Robin Tarr was watching this lot from his office, and he sent a company clerk across there to our instructor, you know, and he said he wants to see me in his office. So, but you got to listen to this. So I get sent off. I march off the parade square, and I go and I march into his office, and you know, now I drive my foot into the ground because the boss man's there, you know, and you know his reputation from being an RSM, you know. And then I did something really stupid because I had a rifle at the shoulder, and I saluted him to the beret. Oh, yeah. Then I realized I'd made this mistake, you know. And I said to him, you know, I'm sorry, I'm like really nervous. I don't want to be standing here in front of you, you know. So I said to him, okay, that's fine, relax. So he says to me, go and hand your rifle into the armory and wait for me on the veranda there. So I handed my rifle in, and Robin Tarr came in. I don't know if the guys will remember from those days. Robin Tarr used to drive around camp on a little scooter. And yeah, Robin Tarr gets his scooter and he pulls to the front of the training troop and he says to me, get on. Now I'm thinking, chaps, what's going on here? And Robin Tarr drove me down to the camp hospital. And he took me himself in there to Doc Webster, and he said, hey, listen, this problem, you know, it's been going on. And he left me there with Doc Webster. So that's what sort of guy he was, you know. Well, his discipline was fierce, and the rest of it, he was, you know.
Yeah.
He was cool. So, you know, they offered me a medical discharge, which I declined. And Robin was quite impressed with that, you know. So then, and we passed out. There was no fanfare. They didn't even take a course photograph.
Before you move off the subject of your recruit course, did you do your 120 miler at Ngezi Dam like us?
I can't remember where we did it. Hey? I can't remember where we did it, but it was a proper 120 miler. I mean, yeah, it was fierce. Yeah. Well, if you did 120 miler, you know, it was a fierce exercise that day. Yeah, that sorted the men out from the boys.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, we did ours at Ngezi Dam where there were lots of wild animals. At night, we were surrounded by a hungry lion, a pride of lions, and it was quite scary. And they only gave you only had one magazine, you know, and that was taped up, so you had no live rounds, you know. So you guys had FNs and everything already, or SLRs? Or?
Yeah, we had FN. Now we had FNs, eh? There was the odd FN I had in training troop was a genuine Belgian made FN, you know, it wasn't a South African. There was no, I don't think I ever saw an SLR in the training troop magazine, in the training troop armory. Okay. We still did lots of, you know, we did the Uzi, and we still fired Bren guns. We still had a full thing of Bren guns in the army there, and we actually had to, as part of training, we had to do the Bren guns. I battled with a Bren gun because I'm left-handed, you know, and that thing was built for a right-hand person to fire.
Yes. I remember some of the older soldiers who were more probably like Log Enslin had a wooden butt FN. You know, the original one with a wooden butt. Yeah. Most of the new guys had the plastic butt. It wasn't quite a R1, but it had a black plastic stock as opposed to a wooden stock, you know.
Yeah, that's the one I had. It was a genuine Belgian. It had a wooden stock, but a plastic forend.
Exactly. Yeah.
Plastic forend.
I liked the wooden stock because it was a little bit shorter than the black.
I had one in support.
Yeah.
I managed to get one out of the CQ stores when I was the QM stores when I was the CQ at Support Commando. I managed to get a genuine Belgium FN out of the CQ stores that I had in Support Commando when I was the CQ. I had that, and I had a Browning high power, which all the officers were trying to get off me, But I
Yes,
had
I also
connections
had one of those, yeah.
I had connections inside the QM stores, so I made sure it was mine before it even got put on the books,
I loved that Browning high power. It was such a
Yeah,
beautiful weapon, yeah. Also
yeah,
FN, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, that was training troop, and then, like I said, I was the only one who went to support group. So I had to report to base group because we were part of base group in those days. And I can't remember who the CSM was there. When he got posted up, Lou Allamore took over from him, but I can't remember his name. So I had about 3 or 4 days kicking my heels in base group, because we did muster parade with base group because we were part of base group, but nobody wanted anything to do with me. So after muster parade in the morning, I just did whatever I wanted for like 3 or 4 days.
Okay.
And then the CSM got hold of me and he told me I had to be down the next following morning in front of base group with all my kit to go, because the group was in Rushinga. And I had to be down in the front veranda there, base group, and a resupply vehicle would come and pick me up. And when I moved my kit down in the morning, I was joined there by a corporal, Andy Balaam. And the guys will know Andy Balaam because, I mean, he went across to the Scouts and he's written all those books. And he'd finished his first contract and he decided that Civvy Street wasn't his scene. And he signed back on, and now he was going to the Commando at Rushinga. So it was Andy Balaam and myself on the resupply vehicle. And in those days, I mean, it was just the two of us in the back with all the supplies and one driver, and off we headed for Rushinga, Not like a couple of years later when you wouldn't want to do that drive even with a full escort.
Yeah. Was there terrorist activity at Rushinga at the time, or not really?
No. It was still border control we were doing.
Okay.
So we arrived at Rushinga, and it was, we drove up, the Rushinga base camp. The guys could see the resupply vehicle coming up, so everybody gathered, because they had to be unloaded, and they knew there was goodies, parcels, and mail, and all sorts of stuff. And we drove into the camp, and the vehicle stopped, and the guys opened the tailgate, and there was this big blonde troopy standing there. Big guy, he's a well-built guy, it's a blonde troopy, and he looked at me and he said, "I'm going to fuck you up." So that was Big Bug's hide. We had 2 Bugs hides in the Commando over time. We had little bugs and big bugs, and that was Big Bugs. Old troopy who kept refusing promotion. So I don't know who pissed on Bugs' battery that day, but anyway, Andy Balaam got stuck into him and told him to leave me alone, and back off. So that was my introduction to the group, and it was strange, coming from training troop, and you go in there, and it was full of lots of old guys. There was very few new troopies there, and I got snide there big time. I mean, I ended up doing about the first 3 days. I don't think I slept at all because I was doing everybody's guard duty, and gambling was a big thing. Poker was a serious thing amongst the troopies and the corporals there. A big gambling school going on, and with big money changing hands. And it was those guys I ended up doing their guard duty for them, Paul Holt and John Millett and big crowd of them, Vancy Myers. And so the first couple of days were like rough, because I was being taken to the cleaners there by these old school. And then I heard there was a 10-day patrol going out. And I went to... Dave Monks I heard Dave Monks, Corporal Monks, was going to take the patrol out, and I went to Dave Monks and I said to my corporal, I said, "I need to go on this patrol." They said to me, "I think you were going to go whether you asked or not, because you need to learn, So I ended up going on a 10-day patrol, which was cool because I managed to get some sleep while I was out on this 10-day patrol, and I was taken under Boerta, and who was to lose his legs, at Whistlefield Farms in 1972, and Tiki Millet sort of took me under their wing, and Clarence Van der Walt was another corporal that was on the patrol. But Dave Monks was in charge, and we disappeared for 10 days, which was nice, And then we came back. I can't remember, it's such a long time ago to remember the timelines is difficult. But we went back to Salisbury, and back to the normal barracks, mortar drills, and the training. And Because with our Uncle Ron, there was never one spare moment. You were always doing something. I mean, that XR, he had the timetables laid out there. So, it was lots of mortar drills and stuff. And we were still, the helicopter mortar drills were still in the early sort of stages in those days. And I don't know if you recall, there was that mock-up helicopter in the front of training troop there. And we used to spend hours doing helicopter mortar drills from that mock-up. So we were kept busy all the time. And then, 72 was, we did a lot of, we ended up going, I think 72, didn't we? We did Op Sable. There was a battalion exercise, battalion classical war exercise. And then we went on and we did a big firepower dem brigade. It was like a brigade exercise where was artillery, there was us, and we put on a big firepower dem shooting over the edge of the escarpment. It was RR company mortars there as well as us with our 6 tubes. And like I said, artillery were there, and the hunters put in a strike. It was like a big exercise. And it actually turned into quite, because there was a bit of a story started between the battalion and artillery, and I don't know who started it, but one of the commandos ended up driving into the artillery camp and hitching up one of their 25-pounders and driving away with this thing, and it caused quite a stir because sort of we learned something later on is that artillery units don't have colors like we had. They don't have flags. The cannon, their artillery pieces are the colors, So we had the guys had actually stolen the artillery's colors. So it turned into a bit of a diplomatic brawl between artillery and the battalion. But anyway, so that ended, and then the battalion went on and we did a coin exercise, battalion coin exercise. I can't remember much about that exercise, but we were all over. All I remember is that when we went on that, when we were traveling to that battalion coin exercise, we got nailed by tsetse flies, badly. When you're traveling and the tsetse flies get hooked in a vacuum behind the truck, and then when it slows down and then they're all over you, but we got eaten badly by the tsetse flies on the way there. And we did that. We did that exercise with the battalion. And then on the way out from that exercise, we had to do some live fire crash action drills, which is where you're driving down the road. We had our F250s, with the 81s in the back. And all of a sudden, the control post operators and the guys in charge of the mortars get given a target that you got to hit, and you do it from the vehicles are driving, you stop, you get out, you set up the tubes, you engage the target, and then you dismantle them and put them back in the vehicles and you disappear. It's supposed to stop the enemy having enough time to find you and return fire on you, So we had to do this crash action, but I think, if I remember correctly, it was only a section. So I think it was 3 tubes we put on the ground. And I was a number 2 on one of those mortars. I can't remember which one. And
was it 60 mil or 81 mil?
No, 81s. We didn't have the 60s at that stage. We still had a couple of handheld 3-inch. I mean, a couple of handheld 2-inch. Yeah, it was the 81s. So we went into this crash action, and you bed in with us 81 mil mortars. You got to bed that base plate into the ground, and you bed it in on a maximum charge, And with the ammo we were using at that time, those rounds were supposed to go like about 4 or 5 kilometers, when you bed in. And the mortar I was on, I was the number 2. We got into the bedding, did the bedding procedure, and we bedded our mortar in, and we adjusted the bipod quickly, so the number 1 could lay back onto his 0 lines, back onto the aiming post. And I stood up, and as I stood up, the mortar to my left bedded in. And I wasn't looking directly at it. It sort of like was in my peripheral vision, And I just seen this big orange flash and this black smoke. And was like somebody gave me a good slap, the shock from it. And I looked over and I've seen the mortar was lying on the ground. And the number 1 and the number 2 were lying on the ground. They're Porky, Christy Smith, and Krach Jonker. And I sort of, what is going on? And I've seen the guys running from the rest of the group's vehicles, were running towards where we had this thing set up there. So I sort of moved over there to go and have a look, and Krach Jonker was lying there, and he had the clamping collar mechanism from the 81 was embedded in his head, you know. And Porky Christie Smith was lying there, and his arm was off. It was just hanging on by a piece of skin and a little bit of muscle and stuff, you know. So what had happened is that bomb had detonated in the barrel.
In the tube.
Yeah. And then I seen there was another crowd of guys in front of where the mortar was, and then I seen it was Corporal Newton, or Dino Newton. He was down on the ground as well, you know. So it was a sad day, and then they managed to find a helicopter from somewhere. I don't know who was. Obviously, Uncle Ron, and you know, he was there, and the guys, they managed to get a chopper in and took those guys out. We sort of cleaned up, and then from there it goes a bit hazy. It was quite a while before we got back into Salisbury, and I managed to go and see Porky in hospital, you know. But I mean, it was amazing. While Porky was lying there, they'd filled him full of morphine, you know, and then they decided then to cut the arm off there, you know, the medics. I think it was Sammy Moore. They pumped Porky full of morphine. And after a while, Porky was lying there, and he was asking the guys to go and get him some mellows, you know, mellows music. He wanted to listen to music. So I had the guys searching among the kit for a transistor radio so he could listen to LM radio. He wanted to listen to LM radio, and busy cutting his arm off, you know. So Porky was a staunch guy, you know. Well, you can see how he did after that. So that ended that story for us. And then
it was a bad batch of ammo, or?
Yeah, it was a bad batch of ammo. Apparently, according to speaking to later on, you know, the fire controllers who were up front with old Uncle Ron, and that when the mortar, the tube I was on, when we bedded in, apparently one of the guys there saw our bomb sort of cartwheeling through the air. So the tail fin had come off that bomb after it had left the barrel. But what happened there was, in their case, I mean, the secondary charges, and that detonated the actual TNT in the mortar bomb, you know. So we didn't have mortars for quite a while after that, because they froze all the ammunition, you know. They took it all away. They emptied the RLI magazine, and we didn't shoot mortars for quite a while until a new batch of ammo came in. And then Uncle Ron, you know the story about when you fall off a bicycle, the best thing to do is pick it up, and I don't know, Uncle Ron organized the shoot for us. And I think, if I remember correctly, it was at Nkoma, and the whole group went to Nkoma, and we had to go and do the whole bedding charge 7 story all over again, you know, because the guys were reluctant. You can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did my mortar course at Nkoma as well, yeah.
Yeah. So then after that, I can't remember. We didn't go straight back to barracks, because it was like about a week or so before we saw Porky again. But then I know we ended up in Kutsa. And I mean, I'd never been to Kutsa base camp. It was brand new for me, and the heat was terrible down there. And we were down in Kutsa. And then after that, hazy, I can't remember exactly what was going on, what we did. But we were out, but the group was split up. It wasn't together. Like when we went to Kutsa, we went in our F250s. We had no RLs with us, you know. We had no trucks with us. We went down in our F250s. And then we ended up coming back into the barracks. We went back to the barracks because I remember going to visit Porky, and then we went back out again to Kutsa. And then we came back from Kutsa, and we arrived at the barracks, and we arrived late in the afternoon, you know. So we sort of unpacked the ammo and the mortars and stuff. We secured the ammo and the mortars and our weapons and stuff. And I think it was all Ian Buttonshaw was with us. I'm sure it was Ian Button and Alan Shaw, and I don't know who else, but it was. So anyway, we didn't unpack our vehicles because it was too late, you know. So we just parked them up still with all the kit and everything in them. And we were told, you know, okay, you guys can go out. Back tomorrow morning, we're going to finish sorting out, you know. So we all showered and everything and got dressed. And we disappeared into town, and I was in Cocktail. We were having fun in Cocktail, a normal place where we went to hang out. And then while we were in Cocktail, this is now coming up towards Christmas now, you know. While we were in Cocktail, one of the battalion's RPs came in with an MP, and they said to us, "You're going back to camp now, you know. There's a Land Rover downstairs. Off you go. Go and jump in the Land Rover. So I don't know how many of us were there. I can't remember. But anyway, they rounded us up and we got taken back to camp. And that was the night that they attacked that Altina farm. You know, the first farm attack before the war got into full swing. So they attacked that Altina farm. And I mean, our vehicles were already packed. All we had to do was get some more rations and we'd draw all our rifles and stuff again. And we got on our vehicles and we drove to Centenary. And we arrived in Centenary and then we set up a little base camp somewhere near, I can't remember. I remember going to the country club, so we must have been pretty close to the country club. We went to the country club. And then I think it was the night after that they attacked Whistlefields. And we got sent to Whistlefields now. So we arrived there, it was still dark because I can remember being on the front lawn of the Whistlefields farm, and there was police there, and there was all sorts of, and we went into all-round defense around the house, you know, while this lot was being sorted out. I remember we'd been doing all those battalion exercises and stuff, so we were still kitted out more like a conventional, we were still wearing battle order, you know, proper like battle order. We still had our pangas with us and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know if you remember, it was like being on drill when you did those classical war exercises. The kit you had to carry, you know. So we still had pangas and ropes and all sorts of stuff on us. And we eventually we got in there and we cleared that garden for the chopper to come in, because there was that young child that was injured in that thing. So we chopped their garden up for them so that the chopper could land there in the front yard and take the kid away, you know. And then our Buttonshaw was like the kingpin for support group, because the rest of the group was, I don't know where they were. So now they start organizing, getting the tracker teams in, you know, and the guys are looking for spoor, you know, to try and see if they can pick up the spoor so we can start a follow-up. And we get sorted out now into our sticks. And I ended up with Vancy Myers in Vancy Myers' patrol. I can't remember all the details. I know Ian Buttonshaw and them, they went somewhere because they'd found tracks by a store or something. They came back and they got the vehicles, and we all got onto the F-250s because that's what we had. And there was a couple other vehicles there, Land Rover and something else, I can't remember. And we had to get on these vehicles and we were going to drive to where this follow-up was going to start, you know. And in that front vehicle, Ian Buttonshaw was sitting on the front. We hadn't gone far. I was in the back of an F-250. I later was told that there was Dino Newton and Paul Holt were sitting on the tailgate. You know, the tailgate was open, and that's where they were sitting on there. And we hadn't driven far, and that front F-250 hit that landmine. And Wood Buerta lost both his legs in that, and then Corporal Moore was badly injured. He died a couple of days later, if I can remember correctly. So then that all stopped. Every vehicle was stopped. Nobody was allowed to drive around in vehicles until the place had been cleared for mines, you know, so everybody was back on their feet. And the guys that were going to go and do the follow-up, they disappeared, and Vancy we were sent up. So that as you moved away from the farm, it became a little bit like the Metopus, you know, the copies and all that sort of stuff. And we were sent out as a stop group. And we sort of moved positions a couple of times. And we were out, I can't remember how many days. We now get into Christmas, and I know we were moved away from the farm, and we were actually walking up like a big valley. And in front of us, there was a big gomo. It was like half bowled up the top with a little pile of boulders on the top. There was some trees in it, you know. And we were told to head up and get up onto that thing as an OP, you know, because there had been a contact away from us. Ian Buttonshaw was involved in that, you know. We didn't even hear it. We just found out later listening to the sit reps, you know. And we battled to get up to the top of this koppie. We had to use our toggle ropes we managed to get one guy up, and then we used the toggle ropes to pull the other guys up to the top, you know. So we became this OP on the top of this koppie. And then we listening to all the goings on. And then we heard them talking about, they thought maybe the sturs were in that valley that we were in. But in those days, there was no K cars and that sort of stuff, you know. And they were going to try and flush these guys out. So what they did was they came in with a vampire. And we were standing up, we were up on the top of the copy. We were so high, the vampires were below us when they came in to do the strafing run down the valley to see if they could flush these tours out, you know. Nothing moved. We didn't even see any game come out of there after the vampires had finished. And then we were told to just stay there, you know, where we were. And it turns quite humorous because what happened was we're now a couple of days in, you know, and we only had like 1 day's rations on us and 2 water bottles, and now we're sitting up and we run out of food. We run out of water now. We're down to smoking our tea bags. So we're smoking tea bags. And eventually we're hanging the used tea bags, the tea bags that we'd used when we still had water, we hung them up in the bushes there to dry out so we could dry them out to smoke them, you know. And I told you about the gambling. We ran out of paper. We didn't have any paper to wrap the tea leaves in. And the only person who had paper there was Vancy Myers. His little notebook that, you know, all the NCOs carry that little, because they had to do the shackle codes and all that sort of stuff. But in the back of that notebook was all of Vancy's gambling information about who owed him money and. So he couldn't use the front pages because it had all the shackles stuff written in it. And he only had a couple of open pages, empty pages, you know, that he needed for future to redo the shackles. So now it becomes a psychological operations there to get Vancy Myers to part with the paperwork out of his notebook so we could smoke our tea leaves. So anyway, we managed to get a couple of pages out of our Vancy, and those guys who knew Vancy, I mean, the language of Vancy used, you need an interpreter. I think the only guy that really understood Vancy was Lovemore, the Batman from Commando. It was Commando. So anyway, now we've stuck up there, and it's Christmas Day. It was Christmas Day or Boxing Day. And we had to send our trip in. Now, Vancy is looking for trouble now because Uncle Ron's there. He's in there and he's running the story now, you see. So we have to send our trip in. So Vancy sends the trip in. And then he tells him after he's given him his trip in, he says, but now listen, guys, we've got no water. We've got no food. We ran out a day ago of water, you know. We're really thirsty up here. And we need something to drink, but since it's Christmas and the shops is closed, it's okay, you know. We're not too worried, but perhaps if you could organize something. And I'm sitting and I'm listening to this lot, and I'm thinking to myself, if Uncle Ron is listening to that, Myers is deep in the shit now. So anyway, we get no response. And a couple of hours later, here comes a chopper comes, and they always called themselves Cyclone 7 in those days. You know, you didn't have yellow lead, green lead, or yellow 1 or yellow 2. It was Cyclone 7. Cyclone 7 starts calling Vancy. So he says, well, guide us in onto you so we can, you know, we've got some stuff here for you. But the chopper couldn't land on top of that gourmet. So what he did was he came and got into harbor and he put his front wheel on one of the big rocks there and stayed in the harbor. And the tech started passing us rat packs and lots of water. They sent lots of water up to us. Way too much water, but lots and lots of water. Rat packs, and they sent us cigarettes. And one of the last things to come out was there, which was really nice, was our Christmas bonus was a bag of a pocket of Mazoe oranges, which really went down a treat. I mean, you know, because our mouths were dry. Yeah? Tongues were starting to swell up a little bit. And then just before the chopper left, the tech pulled an envelope out of his suit. He had it tucked in. He pulled it out and he handed it down, and it came down and it had Vancy Myers' name on it, you see. And then the chopper disappeared. And if you ever heard of Vancy talk, it was funny. So Vancy was like full of smiles because he got his letter, and he's like boasting now. He's got this letter, and he's telling us this is from his stick chick. Now, the guys, I need to explain what a stick chick was. In the battalion, you were issued 3 pairs of boots. Boots hockey for the use of, boots combat for the use of, and boots ammunition, which we called our stick boots. Remember, we boned so much and looked after so carefully because you could see your face in there. You didn't want to. So if you had more than one girlfriend, the one you liked the most, you called your stick chick. So now here's Vancy Myers saying, oh, look at this, I've got a letter from my stick chick. Yeah, Vancy. Vancy opens this letter, and it's from Uncle Ron. Addressed to Vancy. Doesn't send him a message on the radio. Sends him a message in an envelope, handwritten by Uncle Ron. Tell him Myers to stop whinging and get on with your job. So So that was Christmas Day, 72, stuck on top of a hill, smoking tea bags. So yeah, we got off from there. That story ended up, I can't remember how many of those tours they sorted out. It was the captured one. And so eventually we got down from there. And then from Centenary, we got sent to Mount Darwin. So now we arrive in Mount Darwin. And I mean, there's no base there at all. There's nothing there. But there was that fairly newly built courthouse there, and it wasn't in use. So the district commissioner said to Uncle Ron and him, there's the courthouse, you can stay in until you sort out a camp, which we ended up close to. We ended up by the football fields there, we dug shell scrapes and put up bivvies by the football field. But in between, we stayed in the courthouse. So we're in the courthouse. And I mean, we've been out for months now. We haven't had any R&R support group. We've been doing all those exercises and all that. So we get there and then they tell us, no, we can go. Now the courthouse is across the road from the country club, right across the road, So they said, okay, guys, you can go to the country club, but just behave yourselves, So first night, we were allowed to go to the country club in like batches. We weren't all allowed to go at the same time. But all the farmers' wives and that started complaining because of all the FNs that were in the passageways and in the corners and the rest of it. And then we were told we could go to the country club, but we weren't allowed to take our weapons with us. We had to leave them in the courthouse. I think it was the next night or the night after that, we were across in the courthouse, in the country club, myself, Clive, Larrett. There was lots of us in there. I don't know, maybe about 8 o'clock at night, I think. And I don't know if you remember a guy by the name of Hawksworth. He was abducted by tours after they killed those ground inspectors. They killed those 2 old toppies ground inspectors, and then they abducted all Hawksworth into Mozambique. He was sitting in the country club there. And we're in the country club, and the next minute, the tours open up on the country club and the courthouse. When they attacked the country club. So now we got no rifles. Our rifles are on the other side of the road in the courthouse. And everybody's switching the lights off and everything. So now we got to get out the country club across to the courthouse, and it was dark. Now we're sniveling across the road to get to the courthouse. And I can yell Johnny Normington, telling the guys, shoot the lights out, because there were street lights there, So the guys are, there's Johnny Normington now shooting out the street lights, But now it's black. And you get into that courthouse, it's now a battle to find my room. Eventually I found my rifle and my webbing, and I crawled out of there. And there was like a couple of exits there, and I crawled out of the exit. And there was somebody there, sort of like on the right-hand side of the exit firing, So I crawled out sort of next to him, and I fired 1 or 2 rounds. But I couldn't see any muzzle flashes or anything, And then the shooting all stopped. But the guy next to me had fired quite a fair amount of ammo, And then it sort of quietened down. And then the NCO started going around and sorting us out, putting us into proper positions and all that sort of stuff. The people that were stuck in the country club, they just had to stay in there the whole night. They were just told, you just sit fast there, you're not going anywhere. So now we get put in positions around the courthouse, all around positions around the courthouse. So I managed to crawl back in, and I got my sleeping bag because the ground was hard. I wanted something between me and the ground. So we spent the rest of the night out there. And while we've been sorted out, the guy that was next to me that was doing all the shooting was John Millett. So anyway, as it started getting early, first light, we know now we've got to go. There's going to be a follow-up from this, and we've got to get ready. So we start organizing ourselves. Sorry, after it had gone quiet that night, then, you can't keep an RLI troopie down there. And we line there. It's dark now, and the guys start talking amongst themselves. And then, I don't know who it was. One of the troopers say, Corporal Normington. I said, yeah, what do you want? He says, do you need some more ammo? He says, no, I've got enough ammo. Why are you asking? He says, shit, you used a lot of ammo trying to shoot those lights out. So now the others are starting to take a dig at Johnny Normington. Then a few minutes later, another troopy standing there. Corporal Normington. Yeah, what do you want? Says, you need to come here, Corporal. He says, why? He says, hey, I can see there's a light on town, in town. I need you to come and shoot this thing out, So that's like the banter that was going on. So as it gets light now, we're getting ready. We go back in, we get our kit and everything, make sure we got rations and water and everything. and we get in. But now there's still toppies lying all over the place, you know, so we have to pick these things up quickly before we go. And now Ian Wiggle walks out of there. Now, if you heard Ian Wiggle, he talked the same as Vancy Myers. It was all slang, you know. And Ian Wiggle walks up there. Says, hey, XA. Says, who was fighting the Second World War out here? He's looking at all these empty cartridge cases on the ground. He goes, lots of them lying there. I said, no, that was where John Millett was lying. We called him Majat. Where Majat was lying, you know. I says, oh, and he looks around there, and Ian Wiggle was naughty, you know. And he looked there, and there was the group petrol Bowser right in front of where we'd been shooting, you know. So Ian Wiggle, he walks over to the petrol Bowser and he has a look at this thing, and there's no holes in it, there's no leaks, it hasn't lost any fuel or anything. And he comes back, and I think it was Dave Woods, might have been Willie van der Riet. And Ian Wiggle says, hey, Sarge. So yeah, he says, Sarge, he says, I think you need to do a recheck on John Millett's star rating. Now, to fill you in what a star rating was, when you passed out of training troop, you came out as a trooper, but you had no stars. There was certain tests that you had to pass, and as you passed the test, you got given a star, and when you got a star, you got a pay rise. So it was an incentive to make the guys. And once you had 5 stars, it made you more eligible to be promoted to Lance Corporal. So you have to do these tests. So what he's telling the sergeant to do now is check John Millett's star rating. He says, because he can't even hit a Bowser from 25 meters. Like, why has he got 5 stars, you know? We need to derate him now. So the humor started already, you know? And then we ended up going down to the bridge because a couple of minutes after they stopped attacking us, they tried to blow the bridge. They put landmines on the bridge and detonated the landmines, you know, up against the structure underneath the bridge. So that follow-up started, and that didn't turn into a lot, you know. So that was the start of 72, 73. So still early days yet, you know. Like,
what was that op called? Was that an op?
What's this?
The Altina farm and everything, was that?
No, well, it turned into the op hurricane thing, you know, but
yeah.
It didn't have an op name. It just happened out of the blue, you know. I mean, nobody was expecting that.
Okay.
Even Special Branch and everybody were caught a bit by surprise by Altina and Whistlefields, eh? Yes. I might be mistaken, but the way I saw it was that everybody was caught a bit by surprise.
That was the start of Op Hurricane, you're right, yeah.
Yeah. So then we basically ended up, like I said, we dug in next to the football field there and put up, used to sleep in shell scrapes. There was no barrack rooms or anything in it, you know. The officers were all in tents, and we were in shell scrapes on the bivvies.
When I arrived at Jock Darwin in 74, was also by the football field. But by then they'd built a canteen and they'd built barrack rooms, and 7th Squadron were based on the football field. Yeah, and we had showers, and even built a brand new Salute Scouts fort there. So in 74, it was they had bunkers, you know, with lots of sandbags and machine gun posts and everything, and a little parade ground in the middle. And the MTs off to one side near the football field. But it was quite a nice established Fire Force base in the latter part of 74. So did you guys build the bunkers and all that? Did you build that?
Yeah, we started. We dug in next to that football field. We moved out, we dug in next to the football field and then moved from the courthouse to the football field. Like I said, we were sleeping in shell scrapes under bivvies. I mean, we got wet, those shell scrapes got full of water, and it was like, but that's how it started, yeah. And then we started to build bunkers and started to build stuff above ground. And the Fire Force camp was basically finished before they started building the fort, because before the fort, those Salute Scouts guys were based at a farmhouse in Bandura.
Okay, yes, that's right. Yeah.
You know, those early Darwin days, Stretch Franklin and Andre Robbie used to come and visit our Uncle Ron quite a bit. They used to come and have dinner with us. Officers and the group's senior NCOs, you know, in their officers' mess tent, and we could see they were because they battled to wash all that camouflage cream off their faces, you know, because they still had it around their eyes. They couldn't get rid of it there, and there was parts of it, you know, where they couldn't. And you could see when you spoke to them that they were. We ended up going out one night. We got called out in the middle of the night, There's an old mine somewhere just close to Darwin, and we got pulled out of bed in the middle of the night and taken by a vehicle down the road somewhere, and we had to debus there, and then we had to do a walk-in. And it was dark, it was pitch black, and we were doing this walk-in, and we got close to, I don't know how the NCOs found this place, but no, I take my hat off to them because they found it, this old area where this deserted mine was. While we were walking in there, something ran away from us in the tall grass. There was like a little bit of a stream there, and it was tall grass, and something ran away from it. And then the guys in the front tripped over. They found what we were looking for. They tripped over a dead tur. Apparently, there was 3 of them lying there. And Stretch Franklin had to take them out because they'd compromised him. So 2 of them were lying on top of each other, and the one was a little bit away. Apparently, took him out with a handgun. I don't know. I'm open to correction, but this is what we heard. That Stretch took him out with a handgun. So then we realized that there was funny stuff on the go, and then we saw some of the Sleuth Scouts guys there because they came out, and Stretch came out, and we seen these guys, and we knew that was my first sort of inkling of that what was going on with the Scouts was like really, But it wasn't Scouts in those days. It was still operating out of Bindura. They weren't, the Sleuth Scouts weren't formed then because Uncle Ron was still our boss. He was close to retirement at that stage, because he retired.
I may be wrong, but I think they were called the Tracker Combat Unit or something.
Or something like that. I don't know.
They all came from the tracking camp in Kruger. Those guys.
They were always hanging around with SB and those guys, because SB had a big presence in Darwin.
Winston Hart and those guys. Yeah.
And they had that, like I said, they were using that farmhouse in Bindura. So that was the early days of Mount Darwin. I mean, Mount Darwin became like a home, home away from home, because that's where we ended up all the time, was in Mount Darwin. Lots of patrols and tracking, and I mean we found a couple of tours sometimes, by mistake, more than through any, sort of like bump into them when you weren't expecting to find them.
Yeah.
So it was hard work to get the numbers,
Yeah.
The 5-4s hadn't started then, and still doing. Then the OPs sort of came in. It was mostly patrols or tracking, from incidents, where the tours had created an incident and you went in and you tracked them down, using leapfrogging and all that sort of, leapfrogging with a chopper and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, Tony, I think we've got enough for one episode now. I don't know how long we've been going for, but it feels like we've been going for almost an hour.
Yeah.
Are you available to do this again tomorrow night?
Yeah.
And we carry on from. So you're in 1973 now. So maybe tomorrow we can start with 1974 and.
Well, 1973 was a big year, eh? I mean, there was lots of stuff.
So there's a lot of stuff you haven't covered yet, eh?
Yeah, this 1973 was a big year. Eh?
Yeah,
lots happened in 73. Lots of things started to change in 1973.
Do you want to carry on for a while and finish 1973?
No, we can end now. 73 is fine. Leave it at go into 73, 74. After sort of 74, 75, it's well documented. I mean, you've had Graham Winston on, and you've had Nigel Henson, and you've had all those guys,
Yeah.
That sort of area.
Still, you have your own story to tell. But yeah, okay, let's carry on. Sorry, I mean, I can edit all this out. This is not live.